President Trump has repeatedly claimed the war with Iran is almost over. He has also stated multiple times the U.S. is close to accomplishing all of its goals in Iran. We wanted to track where things stand now, starting with destroying Iran's offensive missiles. U.S. Defense Department officials have said 80% of Iran's air defense systems have been destroyed, along with more than 450 ballistic missile storage facilities. But U.S. intelligence agencies have assessed Iran still has an arsenal of offensive missiles, many of which are buried, and Iran is starting to dig them out. In fact, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced this today during a Pentagon briefing.
While you are digging out, which is exactly what you're doing, digging out of bombed out and devastated facilities, we are only getting stronger.
The second stated American goal is to annihilate Iran's Navy. The Pentagon claims to have destroyed more than 90% of Iran's Navy by late March, but Iran has been able to attack at least 22 foreign ships, according to shipping data tracker Kepler. This and the weekend's failed initial peace talks has led to the current standoff in the strait with the U.S. enforced blockade. To prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, U.S. and Israeli forces have heavily targeted nuclear facilities in Iran. The International Atomic Energy Agency estimated last June that Iran had about 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has acknowledged that at least some of that enriched uranium is still in Iran, and that the U.S. could launch a ground operation to seize it if Iran doesn't willingly surrender it. But CBS News national security analyst Aaron McLean said that mission would, quote, not only be the riskiest special operations in military history, but also the largest. The Trump administration wanted to ensure that Iran could not arm, fund, or oversee, quote, terrorist armies outside its borders. Israel has aggressively bombed and launched a ground invasion of Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah. Even during the current U.S. and Iran ceasefire, Israel had continued bombing Lebanon, though today Israel announced it will only do so in response to, quote, imminent threats from Hezbollah. Finally, President Trump called for regime change in Iran, as he explained during remarks the night the war in Iran began.
Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
President Trump has claimed this goal has been accomplished because airstrikes from U.S. and Israeli forces have killed multiple senior Iranian officials, including Ayatollah Khamenei. But the structure of Iran's theocratic government is still intact, and Khamenei's son, who's also a hardliner, is the new supreme leader. CBS News chief Washington analyst Robert Costa joins me now. Bob, nearly 7 weeks in, do you think the president's still expected to be in this conflict with no clear end in sight?
Great to be with you. Based on my conversations with sources close to President Trump, he does not have an ideological perspective here in terms of seeking to nation build or to overhaul the Middle East. He really sees this as a targeted conflict where he wants to annihilate Iran's ability to be a major player militarily in the region with access to the development of nuclear weapons. And so it's really an end game where if a deal comes to the table that is appealing to him, that feels like there's economic stability for the United States and its allies, he'll take it. It's not about stretching the war on forever just to continue to bombard Iran.
John Alterman, the Brzezinski Chair in Global Security Strategy at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, told me Tuesday the Iranians think they can take more pain than we can, partly because they're not democratic. They're not really worried about elections. Is the president or are members of his party worried about how this is playing domestically?
When I was up on Capitol Hill in recent days, there is consternation about the cost of this war, about Congress being left out of the discussion in terms of war powers. The president took executive action here to move forward militarily, and some members of Congress in both parties are exasperated about that. And they do believe on the Republican side there could be a political cost, but not so much about the strategy of the war. And we saw Republicans 20 years ago with the war in Iraq feel a lot of political pain at times because of the Bush administration strategy in Iraq. The fallout here is really economic, as you've discussed previously on the show. If gas prices go up, if inflation remains a problem in some places, the war could be part of the cloud that hangs over many voters when they think about this administration and go to the polls.
What do you make of the Vance versus Rubio storyline that seems to have gotten more fuel during this conflict?
Well, there's not some kind of major standoff behind the scenes. It's more about instincts. Vice President Vance clearly has non-interventionist instincts on foreign policy, and he's articulated that both privately, I'm told, and publicly. We've seen in many of his speeches. He's not exactly in line with President Trump's approach to go into Iran in this way, but he's been supportive of the policy. So the divide is really about kind of the origin of how Secretary Rubio and Vice President Vance approach foreign policy. There is a bit of a rift there, but it's not a rift in the active day-to-day policy making inside the White House.
Robert Costa, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing.
That was the president delivering an address on the war just over 2 weeks ago. This week, President Trump said the war was close to over, but with only about a week left of the ceasefire, we still don't have an update on when peace talks will resume. Michael Doran joins me now. He's a senior fellow and director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at the Hudson Institute. Thank you for being here. I do want to play something that former National Security Advisor John Bolton told CBS News 24/7 earlier this week.
Well, the first thing is to find out what his objective is. And to this day, I can't say that I fully understand what his objective is, unless you want to live under the threats that it poses, the nuclear threat, the terrorist threat, the threat to the global economy we see playing out now in the Strait of Hormuz. Unless you want to live with those, if you can't change a regime's behavior, the only alternative is change the regime.
So we need to keep in mind Bolton and the president aren't exactly on friendly terms, but President Trump said the people they're talking to are very reasonable. Do you think that the only way to measure success is through true regime change?
No, I think there is a possibility of behavior change. And if we see that the Iranians, if we learn next week that they've given up their enriched uranium, which the president has said is one of his key goals, and they've given up the ability to enrich on Iranian soil, I think that'll be a pretty good indication that there's a behavior change afoot.
What does success in the Strait look like at this point?
I think success is giving up the enriched uranium, giving up the ability to enrich it on the ground, opening up the Strait of Hormuz, and some indication that Iran is no longer going to support the proxies around the region. I would add to that, of course, also the ballistic missiles. But I think that's the hardest one to guarantee. But if you want to see behavior change, the support for the proxies and the nuclear program are the things that are the easiest to track.
Why do you think that it would be the hardest to prevent them from restockpiling missiles?
Well, because they've already got a lot in the stockpiles, and they're deeply buried underground where it's hard for us to reach. The production of the missiles is entirely indigenous in Iran, and so it's a lot harder for us to influence that from the outside. Of course, that has to be part of the deal, but it's a little bit easier for them to hide and hide stuff underground and put it where we can't get anything. We can't get to it, and you can't sanction it away either.
Michael Doran, thank you.
Thank you.